everyone. It is May, and that means it is Mental Health Awareness Month. My name is Barbie Winterbottom, and I am the founder and CEO of the Business of HR and the host of our weekly show, The Table. And if you've been paying attention, you'll notice that we are trying to tap into all of the different elements and celebratory months that happen throughout the year. And this month is incredibly important to me personally. And I have experienced a lot of mental health challenges within my family. Many of you have heard me say this, but I lost my father to suicide. I lost my baby brother to suicide. My mother has bipolar disorder. And then I met this amazing woman right here next to me, Natasha Bowman. And I am so honored to have you as a guest again to kick off Mental Health Awareness Month. Natasha is an amazing attorney, human resources expert, and is also a huge voice and advocate for the mental health community, if that's a thing, right? For folks out there struggling with your own mental health issues, Natasha has become a voice for all of us. So let's welcome Natasha to the show today. I'm so excited to share your story with our viewers. And I know you've made a few appearances on the table, but there's always new people watching.
That's right.
So, Natasha, I would love to have you kind of share a bit about your journey. And then you have a really exciting announcement to share with everyone. So I can't wait to get to that. But first, let's let everybody know about you, what you do, and what's been happening in your life over the past few years.
Thank you so much. And thank you for that introduction. I actually have goosebumps right now just hearing you say that I'm the voice of the community, because that's really what I'm aiming to be. And then when you question community, I question it at the same time because, so many of us suffer in silence. Can we really call it a community right now? And that's what I'm aiming towards. And I'll get to that later, but I will start with my journey. And thank you so much for having me back at the table. This is my home. I love being at the table. If you remember my first time at the table, that was my first time sharing my mental health journey publicly. And now I'm here again to give you exclusive on what's going on next. So this is my home at the table. So thank you for always having me here. So as Barbie stated, hello, everyone. For those of you who do not know me, as Barbie stated, I'm an attorney. I'm the president and founder of a leadership development firm, Performance Renew. I'm a TEDx speaker, a published author. I have my second book that's coming out in a few days, May 4th, called The Power of One, Leading with Civility, Candor, and Courage. But as she stated, I'm also an avid mental health advocate, which was something that I did not honestly seek out to do. This was not on my goal list 3 years ago. During the COVID crisis, I fell into a mental health crisis. And during that time, I had a suicide attempt, an inpatient hospitalization. And during that inpatient hospitalization in a psychiatric institute, was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And it took me a while to really accept that diagnosis. It's very, very hard to accept, especially when you're very high functioning, such as myself, and consider myself successful and accomplished, to really grasp that I have a mental illness. So it took me a few months to really understand that, to come to grips for. I like to say you go through kind of the stages of grief with it till you get to acceptance. And when I got to acceptance, I realized, how impactful this diagnosis was to me, but more importantly, how many other people out there who are also suffering with the same either diagnosis or other mental health diagnosis, and that they're suffering in silence. They're probably just like me, thinking, should I share this? Is this going to impact my credibility? Or people going to want to hire me? And so when I finally decided to make my story public through this platform, and then I did just a posting that said, I'm Natasha Bowman, and this is the face of bipolar disorder. And it went viral. And so many people message me. I'm talking about tens of thousands of people that messaged me and shared their story. And I heard a common theme throughout that story. And that common theme was, I also suffer from some sort of mental health diagnosis, but I'm afraid to be as public as you are because of how it's going to affect my job. And that's when I knew, being a workplace expert, that I needed to take matters into my own hand. I need to form a community, as you just stated, and think about how can I use my pain and turn it into purpose and create cultures of wellness in the workplace. And that's really what I've been doing over the past several months, is advocating not just for mental health, but for mental health in the workplace.
That's so powerful. And so many of us go through our journeys and we don't pause long enough to ask that question. How
Yep.
can I turn this pain, this experience into something meaningful and purposeful that I can share with the world, and I can potentially lift others and help others to avoid some of the things that I went through, or if you can't avoid it, at least to support them through it.
That's right.
So many of us don't get that, right? So many of us don't, we're ashamed. There's so much shame wrapped around mental health. And it's so unfortunate. I know from my own experience, when after my father committed suicide, I was 5 years old. I was a kid. I knew he was gone and I knew he wasn't coming back. There was so much I didn't understand. And unfortunately, my family, it was, I don't know if it was shame or pain, maybe both. Nobody talked about it. Nobody talked about it. So I grew up not knowing anything really about who my dad was as a person. Was he funny? Was he smart? Did he like fishing? Did he like golfing? Did he like nothing, because no one talked about him. It was like he never existed because it was so painful to even have a conversation. And I never want anyone to go through that, right? Whether you're the person considering ending your life or the people who are left in the wake of suicide. There's two sides to that coin, and everyone needs to open up that conversation. And you're just blazing a trail out there for us, sister, and I love it.
Ironic you said that, around the pain and the shame, you don't know which one it is, right? When it comes to it, and no one talking about it, because I've shared with you in my journey why I have gotten tremendous support from strangers, people I've never met before. I lost my whole family in this journey. Once, after I was discharged from the hospital, my mother came while I was hospitalized to help my husband, to support him and to support my daughter, and to support me. But, once I was discharged, she thought, oh, okay, well, this is it. You're discharged from the hospital. You're better now. I'm leaving, going home. And once she realized, okay, this is not all done, there's other things around this, I want to be public about it in my treatment plan and all those things, she didn't want to be a part of it anymore. And that was part of that shame, that breaking the perception of perfection. And we haven't spoken in almost a year, simply because of my mental health crisis. And this is someone I talk to on a daily basis for over 40 years. And there are also my sister, my niece that I raised as well. And again, I don't know if it's shame or pain. I don't know why. You're just kind of wondering, like, what happened? And as I made this public, and I know that I have extended family members, aunts, first cousins, they're reading my stories. I see them literally reading my stories. They'll comment or whatever, but they have yet to pick up the phone to call me and say, hey, what happened? Like, do you need support? Do you need this? Because you just don't talk about it. And I just find that so strange. People I grew up with, share blood with, have yet to call me to say, did I just read on the internet that you had a suicide attempt? What happened? Why didn't you give me a call? Not one person. But yet I have strangers. I have people like you that we immediately have a bond. And we talk about it. You're someone I can text in the middle of the night and say, hey, I'm having a bad day. And you're like, okay, I'm there. I get that from someone that I've just met in the past year, but people that you've known your entire lives, because of that shame, maybe pain, I don't know, are absent, and I feel discarded, and that's another reason why I want to build this community so that no one feels discarded, no one feels alone. And we start to break that shame, because the more people that come out and talk about their mental health struggles, it'll become just more open, more comfortable. We'll destigmatize it. And believe me, a lot of people do. As I'm making phone calls and building a platform around this, you'll be surprised. Every call I've had, people are like, oh, I'm in because I suffer, or my child suffers, or my spouse suffers. Everyone has a story, but nobody's talking about it.
And I love that you're making it an open opportunity, right? It doesn't matter where you are on this journey or where you're struggling. It could be episodic. Not everyone will be diagnosed with bipolar disorder or any, schizophrenia, whatever type of mental health disorder it might be. Some people, knock on wood, I haven't been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, but that doesn't mean I don't still go through times when I'm struggling. Right now, I'm really struggling with burnout, with the volume of work. There's a lot going on. And when women get to a certain age, our hormones go crazy, right, which causes an added layer of, like, some days I think I'm crazy, some days I think, am I on the same planet as everyone else, because I'm not feeling it. So I think there's that destigmatization, as you mentioned, because you don't have to necessarily be diagnosed with a thing to struggle with mental health. It can be episodic, it can be cyclical, it can be in response to an event or a thing.
Yep.
And you're opening this up to saying, if you're struggling with anything, you're welcome. You're welcome. And I want you to be seen and heard and feel valued and feel understood. And there's no judgment.
That's right. And I'm so glad you talked about so many things that I've been talking about lately, especially with the episodic, the midlife things. With me, and someone I was explaining just the other day, they were like, you were diagnosed at 43. You didn't know that? I'm like, nope, did not know. What, mine is not a daily. Some people struggle with their ups and downs of bipolar disorder on a daily basis. Some people, when they're in that state of mania, they engage in dangerous activities and all these things. My mania fueled my success. I'm like, oh, I don't have to sleep. I can work 3 jobs at a time. I can do this. I thought I was superwoman and everybody else was lazy. But come to find out, it was this, mental health disorder that was fueling my success. And I didn't have very many lows, right? And if I look throughout my life, there have been a total of 3 lows in 43 years. And I didn't even know the other 2 until the suicide attempt were lows. I just thought just a change in life. But I love that you talked about, even with age, and sometimes we confuse our home. We're told, oh, you're going through a midlife crisis, right? Because sometimes as women and even as men, you wake up one day, you don't feel yourself. All of a sudden you're doubting everything about you. You're doubting everything about the people you love. You turn to a loved one. Oh, I don't want to be with you anymore, and all of that. And a lot of times we just say, oh, midlife crisis. No, that's the chemicals in our brains that's shifting. And we know that happens with age. With age, we're very comfortable talking about Alzheimer's or dementia, but we don't talk about some of those other things that happen chemically in our brain that fundamentally alters the way that we think. And that's why it's so important that when those thoughts enter our head and they're persistent, that we go get checked. Just like if I were to have a physical pain, if I were to wake up one morning and my shoulder hurts, that happens to me after 40. You injure yourself sleeping, after you turn 40, so you wake up and your shoulder hurts one day. You're like, that feels strange. And the next day it's again. What do you do after about a week or so with that, with that kind of nagging pain? You go see your orthopedic specialist of whomever. Hey, my shoulder's hurting. we've got to start doing that with our brains. Just because you haven't been diagnosed, just because you haven't had a crisis event or some sort of trauma, does not mean that you may not be experiencing a mental health crisis, of some sort. So it's so important that we are in tune with our brain and our mind, just like we are the rest of our bodies. And if our brain and our mind is acting or functioning or thinking differently than it traditionally has, that's a signal, just like if we would feel some sort of pain, that you got to go get a checkup, right? And I think we've got to think about, don't wait for that critical event, right? Don't wait for, like in my case, it took a suicide attempt for me to be diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Looking back after the diagnosis, there were several points in my life that should have signaled to me, oh, you know what? You should probably go see, what's happening. Something's happening here. And I was very dismissive of it. Eventually it would go away. I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know what that was. I wouldn't do that with the physical part of myself. So we've got to treat our brain the same way we do the rest of our body.
Absolutely. That's so important. And I love how you positioned that, right? If your shoulder's hurting, your knees hurting, your back's hurting, anything doesn't set in equilibrium and in a positive stasis, we typically check it out over time. And I use the word typically intentionally there because women are notorious for dismissing things, right? We've grown up. It's interesting because I was talking with someone the other day, I think on a plane even, women, because we grow up with having periods, right? We have hormonal fluctuations our entire lives. We grow up with pain our entire lives, cyclically associated with these cycles, right? And because of that, I think we're conditioned to not get alarmed.
That's right.
Something is a little off here and there because we've grown up with it forever. Things are always changing in our bodies, and we're like, oh, that's just period cramps. Not a big deal. That's just
whatever.
Whereas I read something recently that said feeling period cramps for women is as in it would be mirroring almost heart attack symptoms for men.
Yeah,
it's that intense.
It
but
is.
we become conditioned to just accept that that's part of our monthly, journey.
Yep. And 1 week out of a month, I'm gonna feel horrible, and
okay, we're good, and then we just move on, and so we don't necessarily respond the same way to other triggers. We just dismiss oh, it's this, it's that, it's no big deal. And then we find ourselves in crisis.
That's right.
And in an institution where people are saying, Natasha, you're not okay.
Yep.
You're not okay. And you've got to find a way to get okay, because otherwise this is going to continue to repeat itself.
Yep. And I love that you talked about being a woman, because there's so much intersectionality that goes with mental illness, right? You just talked about it. So with us, right, it's you have been diagnosed with mental illness, but it's, with me, it's mental illness plus being a Black woman with mental illness. And, there's always, as I grew up, you would hear this phrase, oh, a strong Black woman. And so there was this expectation that as a Black woman, you had to be strong. You had to endure all this stuff, keep striving, keep doing this, and don't ever sit with your pain. Don't ever sit in trauma. Just keep moving on. And that was definitely persistent in my family. And just like you described with your father's suicide, that was the same thing. We never talked about anything, any experience that happened. I was telling my husband, even when my parents got divorced when I was 11, like there was like no sit down, let's talk about it. Let's talk about what this looks like. How are you feeling?
No.
Nothing. It was just, oh, divorce. And we just went on and every other thing that happened during my childhood. It was just, oh, you just go on, you don't talk about it. And so I had been conditioned to do that, and, it was a running joke in my household. If I had a bad day, give me a cocktail and a nap, I wake up, I'm fine, and so I never sat with any sort of trauma. And I always thought, because I'm just a strong Black woman, No, it's just that I've been conditioned to do so. And eventually it starts to build up when you retain all of that and when you don't feel the need to talk about certain experiences. And sometimes if you just don't sit with things in a moment to digest it and to replay what happened and how it's going to affect your life in the future, that's what I'm doing now. And that's even new to my household. Like, you know what, today I'm going to sit in this moment. And people are not used to seeing me do that. And it took a while for people to even allow me to do it because it wasn't me. I'm the bounce back queen, you know? And
Mhm.
even having open heart surgery at 11 years old, you know, I bounced back from that. You know, you've heard me speak. I say I had it in June, and in August and September, I was cheerleading. You know, it was just always this
Right.
expectation that I bounce back. And so now I'm more intentional and purposeful about, again, being in tune with my brain. If I need to talk about something, if I need to sit with something, that's okay. We should be able to do that. And I know you're part of the LGBTQIA plus community. And sometimes there's expectations there with that intersectionality of
Mhm.
many people who've had to oppress their identities, you know, and that has, you know, impacted their mental illness. And I was an ally to the LGBTQIA community very early in my life because I had a cousin who was gay, and I saw, you know, in the South, in a Christian Southern family that was Black Southern family, that was just unacceptable. And I saw how it impacted him of suppressing his identity. And at like 13 years old, he started having patches of hair fall out, and one of his eyebrows fell off. I mean, it was horrific. And I remember thinking at a young age, we're just a few years apart, you know, I'll never support someone going through that, like, you know, just because of who they are. And I
Right.
saw how that impacted him mentally. So, you know, with mental illness, there's so many intersectionalities that go, you know, that are part of it. And it's very scary for people that, you know, have to go through that, not just the mental illness, but having these other things that go along with it.
It's so important, right? There's layers to all of it. There's so many layers to all of it. And it was one of the things that you said, it got me thinking about like generational trauma and
Mhm,
generational illness that we pass down unintentionally.
mhm,
And one of the things I have been thinking about recently is, you know, my grandparents and great grandparents for sure, they lived through the Great Depression
mhm.
and how that actually impacted my parents and me. And you don't think about it. I wasn't alive during that time frame.
Mhm,
I was born way, you know, many years,
mhm,
decades after that. But how has that continued to trickle down?
mhm.
The whole like eat all the food on your plate mentality,
Yes.
right? When you think about that, that
Mhm,
is generational trauma from
mhm.
people who survived a time when they didn't have access to food.
Yep.
So whatever you were given, be grateful for it, eat all of it because you don't know when your next meal's
Mhm,
coming.
mhm,
And yet we continue to do that. So our children, my wife and I have two kids, 9 and 12, and they're both tiny little people, right?
mhm,
And and so I'm constantly saying, make sure you eat all that. And they're like, but mama, I'm not hungry. And I'm
mhm.
like, am I creating I am creating a situation for these kids where they're feeling pressured to eat when they're not
They're not
hungry.
hungry. Mhm.
And and we wonder why we have an obese society because
Yep,
we were in many ways we were force fed
that's
when
right.
we didn't need to be, but they were doing it out of love and out of what they
Mhm.
experienced. And so we think about the millions of people who survived and didn't survive the Holocaust,
Right.
the Black community who, you know, generationally speaking, have survived slavery, have
Mhm,
survived oppression, have survived these things. And then you get to these mental health crises, and we talk about
mhm,
shame or blame or
mhm.
pain. And it's probably a lot of all three because
Yes.
for
Mhm.
how many generations have you had to prove yourself
Yep,
worthy,
yep.
right? Which is not okay. You should never
No.
have to prove yourself
Mhm.
worthy. But you, let's be real,
Right.
if you are Black in America, you have likely had to prove your
Mhm,
worth more
mhm,
than I ever have because of the color of my skin.
mhm,
Is it unfair? Absolutely. But is
mhm,
it reality? Yes.
mhm.
And just
Absolutely.
acknowledge that and say, so all of these things I think play into why
Mhm,
people don't talk about their mental health and the awareness of what they're struggling with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My husband and I talk about that all the time, the generational things that, we know were passed down, whether it was, especially in the Black community, being beat with a belt and that, because guess what? That's the way you were punished when you were enslaved, and that was passed down. And so it took almost to our generation where I don't think we beat kids with a belt anymore because it's like, wait a minute, that's not how you, teach lessons, but that was just something that generationally that occurred, and many, many other things. And like you said, with this, even with the mental health crisis, it was like you said, it's the perception of perfection. You, especially in the workplace, like you don't bring your outside drama in, you don't talk about it, you put your head down, you work, you don't make too much noise. That was always what I was taught as I was, growing up. And then, when I started to make noise in the workplace, even that was, hey, why are you doing that? You need to be grateful you got that job. Why are you complaining about
Yeah.
little things? Get that paycheck and you make good money, don't ruin that. I'm like, no, I'm not going to endure these conditions just over a paycheck, so it started there. And it just generationally is hard to explain, especially in the Black community as well. It was pray about it when, mental health. It was, oh, well, just pray about it. You don't go to church. You had family members. Oh, that's because you don't go to church. That's why you had that crisis, And
Right.
if you go to church, you're going to be just fine,
Because Jesus is going to punish you by
Right.
giving you a suicide attempt and bipolar disorder.
That's
Because
right. Exactly.
come on.
Exactly. Or those that do go to church. And guess what? I have a sister I've shared with you who also suffers from bipolar disorder and has not managed it well, and has, it has significantly had a negative impact on her life, but she goes to church every Sunday, so I'm like, okay, that theory is done. I mean, people, so, but that's just, sometimes it's just, oh, just pray it off and you'll be fine, or you're being punished because you don't, and so it's very hard to explain mental health, and that it's just like every other, many other illnesses. I know you're a cancer survivor, and you don't know where those cancer cells came from. You didn't do anything to give yourself cancer. It's unexplainable where those cells came from. Well, guess what? It was unexplainable why the chemicals in my brain sometimes shift and do things, right? So we got to look at it just that way. I'm not going to look at you if you were, share with me, oh, I've had cancer. Well, what did you do wrong? You didn't go to church. You didn't do that. I would never say that to you.
Wow. Okay, we need to pause on that moment really quickly. I feel like Oprah and Gail right now. Hold on. Let's reframe that, because what you just said is really, really powerful. If I was diagnosed with cancer, I had my thyroid removed twice, but that's another story. Nobody looked at me and said, what did you do to cause that thyroid cancer? You need to go to church more. You need to be more grateful. You need to do this and this. It was, oh my gosh, let's get you the right, surgeon. Get rid of this and create your treatment plan. What medication do you need for the, all these things. And from an ongoing perspective, I have to have my blood checked frequently. I'm on medication for the rest of my life. All of these things. And nobody questions me about that, right? It's totally justified. There's no shame. I'm not ashamed to say, yes, I'm a cancer survivor. I'm celebrated for saying
you're not like, oh, I'm not going to get a job or a client because I survived cancer. You're not going to do those things. But those are the things that people with mental health disorders think about. Like, oh, I can't dare put that I have a mental health disorder because I won't get a job, or I'm going to be retaliated. I'm going to get fired. And I just did a current state of mental health in the workplace, and I have that white paper ready, and it will be released sometime this month. And in the comments in there, were so many people who had been retaliated against because they shared their mental health diagnosis with their employers. Just the lack of empathy, the lack of concern. And, and many gave examples. Oh, I watched this employee who had cancer or a heart attack or a stroke, and they got soup sent to their house and flowers and this and that. I got strange looks, retaliation, and humiliation, and again, if you look at the two, what's the difference? Again, cells that are being formed, bodies acting in an unexplainable way. It's just impacting different parts of your body but somehow we've been conditioned to believe over time that if that brain part of your body is acting differently, if those chemicals are moving around or some cells or whatever happens there that causes these disorders, there's something wrong with you and you don't deserve the empathy and compassion that people with other illnesses deserve. And that's something that we've got to change that narrative. We've
Yes.
got to change that dialogue. It is an urgent state of affairs, especially coming out of COVID, when we have so many people that have come out of COVID with a mental health diagnosis, including myself. I had no
Yeah.
idea until COVID, and there were many, many others. So this is an urgent call to action, is to change the narrative and conversation about mental health.
I couldn't agree more or say it better. So with that, you're not just talking about it.
No.
You're actually doing something about it. And
Yes.
you're doing a lot about it actually. But you have something to share with all of us to help create that community and change that narrative. So I'm excited to hear about this. And I know everybody else is, and I know you're excited to share. So
I am. This is my
let's
first
take
time.
the veil, drop the curtain, let everybody know what are we doing here.
Here's the red ribbon. I'm so excited to announce that because of what I have just stated, that I have realized that there is a tremendous opportunity, especially in the workplace, to create cultures of mental wellness for employees, to be able to provide them with the resources and support that they need to be able to deal with their mental health struggles, but yet thrive in their workplaces. So, with that need, with that call to action, I have formed the Bowman Foundation for Workplace Equity and Mental Wellness. And this is a foundation that's going to be exclusively focused on mental health in the workplace. And I looked around, spent many months looking what resources are out there, what organizations are focused on this, and I didn't find very many. I found a lot of technical platforms, which were great. You've got EAPs, they're great, but I didn't find a comprehensive solution to address the workplace. And as I've talked to people in the workplace who've gone through mental health struggles and asked them about their experiences, and this was actually one of the questions on the survey about if you've shared a mental health diagnosis with your employer, what was their response? And overwhelmingly, the majority was go see EAP. And that's the only resource that many employers provide in terms of mental health. EAP is a great resource, but it should not be a comprehensive solution to mental health in the workplace, right? Number one, if I call EAP, I'm going to get just a limited amount of engagement with them. I get like 3 to 5 counseling sessions, and then that's over. I'm out on my own. I've got to find somebody else. That brings me to challenge number two, is access to mental health providers. Many mental health providers don't take your insurance because they're so in demand. Why do I need to process insurance paperwork? People are paying me cash, and that cash looks like $200 to $300 to $400 an hour. And even then, there's a long wait list. I've got to wait 6 to 8 weeks to even pay to see the mental health provider, which we all know something very traumatic can happen to someone within that time frame. Right. So, that depending on EAP alone, right, is not a comprehensive resource to mental health in the workplace. And EAP does not report back to the employer the themes that they're hearing. Like if there's workplace environmental factors that they're like hearing about on their calls, there's no report back. I used to be head of HR. I would sign the contracts for EAP. You sign off, and that was it. You had no idea what happened. You don't know how many people are calling. You don't know what they're calling about. You don't know the themes. You don't get any data back. And so that's a gap. So again, what we're trying to do is to bridge that gap, to provide more resources, management training as to how to have these conversations instead of just saying, go to HR, go to EAP. Oftentimes employees need way more support about their mental health from you as their manager, So we're developing that, the management training around creating safe spaces for dialogue. We want to continue to do more research to understand what the needs assessment is. We want to put on more conferences and events so we can talk more about it. We want to provide more resources, in addition to training, what other resources are needed, and engage in strategic partners with organizations that may be providing those resources. But we're going to pull that all together and give this package to employers, provide that to them so they have a comprehensive plan. And the reason that I decided to go nonprofit, I have a for-profit company, but I want everybody in the workplace, regardless of their organization's ability to pay for these resources, to have access to these resources. Your experience at work should not be based on your employer's budget, right? So that's what I believe. So we're very excited about the launch of this foundation. We're at the very beginning stages. We've got a great board of advisors that we've put together. We're planning our first inaugural fundraiser event in October, the Global Impact Awards and Gala, where we're going to be recognizing impact makers and organizations, as well as organizations, so we can come together and recognize them, celebrate them, and hear from them about how they're making an impact in their organizations. And we're in May, during the month of May, when we launched the foundation, we're really launching with a grassroots campaign effort, because I want to grow this foundation together with the people on my LinkedIn platform, with the people that this cause really impacts, so we can watch it grow. You know how I am. I'm very active on here. Let's grow this together. Let's do this together, and let's create that community together, so that we can create cultures of wellness within our workplaces.
I'm so excited to be even just a little bitty part of everything that
you're doing. A big part. You've been all along the way.
It's so needed, right? And I love that, it's not contingent upon your employer's budget. It's about what you need as an individual and how can we integrate with those organizations, and recognize the organizations who are doing it really well.
Yep.
And then bring forward those who need help and offer them opportunities to enhance and improve what they are bringing into their organizations and for their people. It's huge. It's so, so important. And we see losses every day, right? And people are leaving jobs in droves.
Yes.
Many of them are regretting it, I have to say, because they're going from one toxic situation potentially to another. But they're trying to find that sanctuary. They're trying to find that place, and they're not able to find it. Sometimes it's because we have to fix ourselves.
That's right.
Internally first, or we're just going to jump.
After a while, you got to get to the point. You may be the common denominator, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we do that with other things, right? I asked myself that this morning because I'm super frustrated with something, and I'm like, okay, this is the 5th time I've had to do this. Is it me? Am I the common denominator screwing all this up, or have I just not found the right thing yet?
Right.
And so there's those things but we need to have that space and the ability to bounce those things off of others who understand where we're coming from to get that clarity.
Yep.
And we don't often have that. We don't have that community of people to reach out to and know that we're welcomed and that we're not going to be judged for the questions we ask or the issues we're facing. That's phenomenal. So if people want to get involved and support the Bowman Foundation, where can they go? Because I'll type in the banner right here. It'll come across.
That would be great. They go to the bowmanfoundation.org. Very, very simple. And, we have to have seed money to get all these things up and going. And every donation counts, $5, $10 a month, the price of a cup of coffee, as they say on some of the infomercials, can change, right? Just think about it. What are you willing to give to have mental wellness in your workplaces, right? And how are you willing to invest in that? And that's what this would be, is an investment in your own mental wellness in your workplace. And I'm also putting that challenge and that same question to organizational leaders who may be watching this, right? Because we definitely are looking for organizational donations or sponsorship opportunities for our event in October. And that event is also on that site, to sponsor the event and be a founding funder. And an investment in your employees' mental health essentially is an investment in your business, because we all know, study after study after study has shown us that when employees are physically and mentally well, they're more productive, they're more creative, they're more innovative. The list goes on and on and on, right? So, again, being able to provide your employees with these comprehensive resources so that they have the tools that they need to be mentally well at work. So they're walking into healthy and safe work environments. And as you stated earlier, that's what employees want right now. Many employees did not go back to the workplace after the pandemic because of their mental health. They're saying, I can't walk back into toxic work environments. I can't do this. That's what we're looking to do, because part of it is a part of our solution is organizational culture assessments and understanding where are there disruptors to your culture, where there are threats to people's mental health, identifying those things, right? So to be able to do that, you're going to see such a long-term positive investment in your organization when you invest in your employees' mental health. So being a founding funder, again, whether you want to donate as an individual, $5, $20, whatever that may be, that goes a long way. If you're an organization and you want to be a sponsor, we'll take that as well. But what we need to know, what we do know, is that there is an urgent call to action that we do something. And I'm not asking people to do anything I have not done. I have already poured my life savings into this, because that's how important it is to me. Because I know, maybe I don't walk into workplaces, but I know that there are millions of Americans who do. There are millions of Americans that will come behind us who will. And I want my kids, I want your kids to be able to walk into workplaces that are prepared for them, that are safe, that are healthy, so they can thrive and be their best selves. That's what I'm investing in, and I hope you will too.
Oh, I love that. I such a powerful message. And I know it sounds trivial, but it truly is less than the price of a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And I know, like, I think, a lot of the children's foundations use that, but it's the reality.
Mm-hmm.
If that donation can help literally save someone's life,
Mm-hmm.
change the trajectory of a family in crisis, and stop that generational trauma,
Mm-hmm.
then it's worth any penny that you can give. And so please, I ask everybody, I've never asked our audience for money before, but I am going to today, that if you have the ability to donate anything, and if you can't donate money, you can share the message, and you can get the message out there and let other people know about the organization and the resources and the mission that Natasha and the Bowman Foundation have. Because I don't know that there is a more needed and impactful mission out there today. And so thank you, Natasha, for all you've already done. And thank you for all I know you are going to do, because I know you, and I'll be texting you at 2 a.m. going, put your manic self to bed. Put your manic self to bed.
You do that all the time. I can show my text messages when you're watching me on there, like, take your manic self to bed.
Right. So, and I love you, and I can say that, and it's not hurtful, where someone else might say that who doesn't know you.
That's friendship. No.
It's the reality, right? Is take care of yourself so that you can take care of others.
That's right.
And you're learning how to do that. And that's amazing. And you're a phenomenal parent and business leader and successful attorney. Like, you have all the gold stars everywhere, right? Mm-hmm. But even you couldn't face this alone.
That's right.
And you've shared with me, without the support
Mm-hmm.
and obviously the love, but without the tactical hands-on support of your husband and
Yes.
your daughter when you were going through the crisis
Mm-hmm.
acute situation, you might not be here.
No, I know for a fact I would not be.
And so nobody can do this alone.
That's right.
And there are certain things we can do alone, but this is not one of them. And and to have a foundation like the Bowman Foundation ready and willing to help you is more than I think anybody could ever have asked for. And but it's so needed. So thank you for that. We all want to keep you around for a really long time.
Oh,
So.
I want to be here, and I want everybody else to be here too, and happy and
Yes.
cared for.
Agreed. All right. Well, I don't think I mean, that was a mic drop moment. So I'm just thrilled to see everything you're doing. You continue every day. I open LinkedIn and I'm a friend and I'm like, damn, look at what else she's doing. Look at this, look at this. But it's so exciting for me to
Thank
watch
you.
your journey and how amazing you and your family are and how you've turned so much of this challenge and and pain into something that's going to help tens of thousands, if not millions of other people. So I thank you for having the courage, I think, to do this because, courage doesn't exist without vulnerability.
That's right.
And you have taken that to a whole new level. And I applaud you. I'm so grateful for you as a friend, as a colleague, and just here to support you in any way we can.
Oh,
So thank you.
likewise. Likewise. You have been such a supporter, such a surprise friend. It's amazing who you meet, on these platforms, and the fact that, we've met in person already. We're planning additional meetings and talk almost on an everyday basis. Thank you for your support. You have been an absolute tremendous asset to my personal life. And I thank you for that.
Oh, well, I love you and you are very welcome. So with that, everyone, go to the bowmanfoundation.org. Natasha's got lots of amazing things happening on Monday.
Yes.
Her new book is coming out on the 4th. I'm imagining there'll be another book very shortly.
Oh, you already know it.
Yeah, I figured that was already in the works. And honestly, we have not talked about that. I promise you, but I just know this one well enough to know that that's probably already halfway written. So it's exciting. And if you're not following Natasha on LinkedIn or all the socials, check her out. Mental health awareness is not all she does. Her organization is amazing, and I can't say enough good things about all the work you've been doing for the workplaces you support and the employees and the people. And this is just another amazing initiative and endeavor that's going to elevate our workplaces, and it's so, so needed. So thank you for everything. Thank you all for watching. Stay tuned for our next edition. We will have other amazing folks throughout the month, specifically talking about mental health awareness. And if you haven't started following me, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can also find all of the table on our YouTube channel, The Business of HR. And if you're interested in being a sponsor, let me know. We are looking for additional sponsors throughout 2023. So thank you all for everything and have a wonderful rest of your day.